who, incredibly, I was, your lovely Madrucha Yocheved over there, you can wave. She's been behind the scenes. Let's give her a little applause. Sorry, she's not waving. But anyway, Yocheved, I was the Madrich over 25 years ago when this guy, Rabbi Tzvi Gluckin, did the seminar. And he wrote a book where it's like the Discovery Seminar in book form. Really, highly readable. And in the back it says, discover this. Who wrote the Torah and how do you know? And these are available for 40 shekels. You can give the money to Yocheved to get this book out there in the world. Just going to make a bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nהיה b'dvaro. I would love a little reminder about mincha. Someone want to be my mincha reminder? Lucian, will you remind me after class that I should do mincha? Sure. Thank you very much. Okay, here we go. Now, you've had a very special day today because how many times have you been in a Jewish institution where instead of calling the book Torah, they're actually calling it a document? Because even the biggest atheist or the biggest Bible critic still admits and agrees that it's a document. You can't get out of that. I mean, it's a document. Documents are written on paper. It's a document. And so you got a whole day where instead of calling it the Torah, you call it a document. And instead of calling it God, your job is just simply, can you figure out who authored the document? Or perhaps maybe a more pointed question is, could a human being have authored the document? Could a human being have authored this document? And that's really a special opportunity. I mean, those who are raised in Hebrew schools or day schools or yeshivas, seminaries, like, it's just not the way people speak. They don't turn it into a document and a hunt for the author. That's generally not going on. So you got this opportunity today, and that's really important because every one of us, no matter what you choose, will always have Judaism as a monkey on your back. And no matter how much you might want to run from that, you can run, but you can't hide. And you'll find yourself either totally observant and with a monkey on your back about it, or you might be just not observant at all, but you'll notice you'll still bagel some guy on the subway and ask him, like, you'll go up to some guy and be like, shalom, just because he looks like me. Because you just can't get it out of your system. You can't really get away from Judaism. It's never going away. And so, what an awesome opportunity to see if it's really valid or not. And you could even argue that it's not really much of a religion because it just asks too much. Leave it to Esha Torah to count how many laws there are. When you break down the actual 613 hyperlinks, how many laws are there in the 613? So we counted. There are about 55,000 laws. Slicha, that's not a religion. Okay, that's rocket science. And the fact that a lot of those laws are a hassle, they're costly, they require sacrifice. Many of them, no one will even know you're keeping them because it's like private Shabbos in your own home. So it really boils down to, is it valid or not? Because if it ain't validated, there's no way I'm doing it. And you could even have a kind of a backwards proof of God, kind of around the back door proof of God, is that if a man wrote this book, he would not have included 55,000 laws. Especially the ones you learn today that are suicidal. Like letting the entire land rest fallow for an entire year, or having our borders left unguarded 3 times a year just so you can party. And I mean, I know Jews take partying seriously, but not at the risk of national security. But a human being would never, ever have left any kind of tradition which required this amount of laws to keep. It would have to be, therefore, verifiable. The document has to be verifiable. Now, the last point of intro I wanted to mention was what a joke it is that we're trying to verify this. Because think about it. Let's say you sent a WhatsApp message to someone that was of security risk for a government. Do you think they could, or let's say a handwritten note that a government felt was a security risk. Do you think just from your handwriting that their people could probably figure out who you are if you give them enough time? Quite likely they'll figure you out. They're going to find you just from that one paragraph that you wrote. Well, what are we doing here? We're trying to figure out if a document was either written by a human being or the creator of the universe. Like, if it was written by a human being, that should be really clear. And if it was written by the creator of the universe, that should also be really clear. So what in the world are we all doing here, spending an entire day trying to figure this out when your own handwriting can be figured out exactly who you are among 7 billion people? So what are we doing here? And the answer is that deep down, there's a part inside of every one of us that wishes it wasn't divine, that it wasn't true. Each one of us has a deep down little secret wish that it wasn't God. Which means you should probably run for your life right now. And the reason why you have a little secret wish that it wasn't God is because human beings like autonomy. And there's just something about there for sure being a God that puts surveillance cameras in your bathroom. Because when there's a God, he's everywhere. No thought, speech, nor action goes unnoticed when there's truly a God. And so deep down, humanity doesn't really want there to be God, and therefore we have a class for the entire day to figure out whether it was a human being or a God who wrote this thing, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world. But we're going to do it anyway. Let's do it. Is that Alex back there? Is that Alex? Can you hit the light switch over there? It's just a line of switches. Just hit the top one. It's starting to get darker out there. The sun's going to be setting during this session. Yeah, it's top button. I'm sure. Thank you so much. And also, how important is this air conditioner? Okay, well, can we just, can you hit the power button on that AC and we'll just turn it back on later if we need it. It's the upper panel. You'll see a little AC switch. Is your AC on too over there? Or it's just our side? Thank you so much. Oh. Yes. Oh. We've got Hashem's breath whistling through the windows. You know, when I'm out in the forest, I spend a lot of time in the wilderness. I was in the wilderness 6 to 8 hours a day from ages 12 to 23. And so I was really kind of raised in the wilderness. And from those years, I still don't have a week where I don't spend a good 8 to 10 hours in the wilderness every week. And you know how I always looked at the trees? I always looked at the trees as God's instrument. Because when wind blows, you don't hear it unless it blows through the trees. And that's God's instrument. And he plays the trees sometimes. Sometimes he plays our windows. And then it sounds like a horror movie. It was a night just like tonight. That was Large March from Pee Wee Herman, by the way. Okay. Okay, here we go. Now, we want to know who wrote the document, so we got to verify, like any document, just like if we had a spy in Iran who was going to lower the radar, so that, we want to make sure, it's our guy, and we want to make sure this guy's got control. This class will be controlled, that our guy can control the radar. If he can't control the radar, we're flying into a trap to go, drop some missiles over there. So we looked at those methods of verification. Obviously, he's not going to be just sending us a WhatsApp to do it at noon, It's going to be coded. It's going to be encoded. And so you saw codes in the Torah. We're also going to want to be able to identify this person as being able to say stuff that we gave him that no one else could have ever known. But on the other hand, it could be that, also that there's going to have to be some kind of accuracy in the transmission. And then we're going to need outside verification because he could pull all this off to us, but be literally tied up with a gun to his head. So we need some kind of outside verification in case our spy is under duress when he's sending the message. So that was outside verification. And the last thing we need to know is, can he drop the radar, which is called what? Control. And how are we going to see control now for Torah, for the document called Torah? How are we going to see the control? The control is a question of, can this author control history? And that's the author's role in history. Or in other words, the control of the author in world history. Because people have free will. So whoever authored that document, if it was a human being, can't control history. If it was a divine being, can control history. Now the way we're going to figure that out is just simply using a principle in Judaism that's called Maseh Avot Siman Labanim. Maseh Avot Siman Labanim means that whatever the forefathers did, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, in their lives, the stories with their wives and the families and everything, whatever they did is a sign for the future. In other words, all of world history is going to take place somewhere between Abraham and Jacob's death. And in fact, a lot of this class is going to be related to Jacob's death. And so just to give you an example of the actions of the forefathers being a sign for the children is Abraham's life with Sarah. Tell me, how much does this look like the Passover Seder? But it's not the Passover Seder. It's Abraham and Sarah. But as soon as Jacob dies, we start with the going into slavery. There was a famine in the land. They went down to Egypt. We were oppressed. We cried out, sent plagues. But guess what? And left with great wealth. That was Abraham, not us. Later, it was the children of Israel, of Jacob, that went through all that. The actions of the forefather are a sign for the children. There, Maseh Avot Siman Labanim. So how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to look at the family tree first of Abraham. Abraham had a son named Ishmael and also Isaac. Isaac had two sons. He had Esau. We call it, it's spelled Esau, but we say Esau. He had Esau and Jacob. So since we're going to be going all the way to the end of history, this is going to be pretty fascinating. We're really going to update right to the end of history. Alex, can you turn the light on in this side? It went off again. Thank you. That we're going to go right to current. Can you hit the light, please, to turn the light on this side? So we're going to go right up until our history. So in other words, we're going all the way until the fight of Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau is going to be our main fight. So now, who are their children? Remember, the actions of the forefathers are a sign for, it could be he was holding it down, by the way. Just press the button once on the top. Just press it once, it'll go on. Okay, is that Jacob and Esau's progeny? What's Jacob's nickname? Israel. And what's Esau's nickname? Edom. The Israelites versus the Edomites. That's what we're going to be looking at throughout history. So let's begin. These three, it's fine. You were holding it down. You had to just press it. We're all good. We're good. Don't touch, please. Oh, no. Please turn it back on. Thank you. We're good. We're good. We figured it out. You were holding the button. You had to press it. Okay? So there are three battles. Jacob and Esau are going to battle three, and then you're going to see the Edomites versus the Israelites are going to battle three. Now, if you don't mind, because we've got a nice crowd today, let's hear some cheering when someone wins, okay? It's going to be a little lopsided. Okay, first battle, Jacob and Esau, it's over the birthright and the blessings, and Jacob managed to get both of them. So let's hear it for Jacob. And by the way, those blessings are who's going to ultimately inherit the land of what? Israel. Everyone say the word Israel. Who's going to get the land of Israel? And that's right. So Jacob wins that one. Esau says, I'm going to kill him. And Jacob said, I believe him. So Jacob runs to the north. He gets married, has about 12, 11 kids, and then comes back. Now, a couple decades later, he comes back. Guess who's waiting on the border with an army of 400 men? Who? Esau, to prevent him from coming. How did he know? How did Esau know that was the day? Answer is because when it comes to the land of Israel, Esau knows. Deep down he knows. And so he knew to come that day. How? It's wild, but he just knew. And of course, Jacob won that one too. So let's give it a little hand there for Jacob. That's our Jacob. And then the last one was the actual burial of Esau. where Esav is preventing the burial of Jacob. A massive, giant burial coming up from Egypt, a huge entourage. And when they finally get to the cave of the burial ground, which is where Hebron, the cave of the Machpelah, there's this blank spot, like who's going to get that spot? And the answer is, it's supposed to go to Jacob. But here, I'm not going to go Kabbalistic on you guys right now, but you should know that Hebron is the key to the land of Israel. Hebron is the key. So it's really important Jacob gets buried there, and Esav knows it. And so here's Esav, 100 and whatever years old. How old was Jacob when he died? 147? What was he? Yeah. 147? There's Esav, his twin, 147 years old, trying to prevent the burial. Anyway, it didn't go so well for Esav. Esav gets killed on the spot. And Jacob gets buried there, and let's just give it up for Jacob. Jacob gets the spot. He gets the nod and is buried in the cave of Machpelah. Okay, the actions of the forefather are assigned for the children, for the generations. So now we're going to see. Now, ladies and gentlemen, right now we're in the trees. I want to show you the forest again real quick. The forest is that we're trying to see the author's role in history. Now, if we can see the author is able to pull off 3 major altercations between Jacob and Esav throughout history, that shows the author's got control. That whoever authored this document, free will aside, can handle having human history literally run its course based on these 3 altercations. Okay, you got the forest? Back into the trees we go. Okay, we're going to start with a little fast. The Jews go through slavery, a couple hundred years of slavery, 10 plagues. In fact, this week's parsha is the plagues. Yeah, we just did 7 of the 10. This coming one will be the next 3. And we get the 10 plagues, splitting of the sea. We leave, we're going through the desert. Where are we going? To the land of Israel. We're going to stop by Sinai for Slurpees, but we're on our way to the land of Israel. Where are we going? Israel. Who would probably want to prevent that? Esav would want to prevent that, except he's already dead. So you know what he's got? Progeny. Amalek is progeny. And he is the direct descendant of Esav, and on a suicidal mission, attacks the Jewish people on their way through the desert. Why is it a suicidal mission? Because the Jews, without even lifting a finger, the God of the Jews, without the Jews even lifting a finger, has decimated the biggest, most powerful country in all of civilization. The Canaanites are quaking in their boots that the Jews are moving towards Israel. And they're just deciding when they should run. Amalek goes for a suicide mission to attack them. They didn't do so hot. They did not win. And so let's just give it up for the Jews. Okay, Joshua fought the battle. Moses' hands are up. And we win that fight. And we get through that one. That's the first altercation. We build the first temple right outside this window, Exhibit A. Okay? And the temple was built. Love doing this class in this room. I mean, this is amazing. You know, we literally built the temple, had the whole, at first the Mishkan was in Shiloh for a couple hundred years, then it was built here in the full temple, and it was destroyed by the Babylonians, and we were sent into an exile, which Jeremiah, the prophet, said would last how long? 70 years in exile in Babylon. The Jews are out there, it became there was a bloodless coup, it became the Persian Empire. And they're in 127 countries, meaning it was a massive conglomerate of countries, all under the King Ahasuerus of Persia, which went from India till Africa. Imagine how big this land was. And the Jews are spread out in those lands in exile. Now, what do you think is going to happen if it's a 70-year exile? Where are we going on the 70th year? To the land of? We're coming out, which means that we're probably going to, just like when we left Egypt, we're probably going to hear from whom? Esav. From Esav or his progeny, otherwise known as Amalek. We're going to hear from Amalek. Now, I outdid myself. I apologize. We just need to learn a little bit about Amalek. Sorry. My bad. Esav had a kid named Eliphaz. That means my God is fuzzy. And Eliphaz had an incestuous relationship with his daughter Timnah, and they had Amalek. Okay, those are 4 names not to name your children in case you were going to be one of those Israelis who just opens the Bible and goes, Nimrod. So, just don't go there, okay? Although I do think Nimrod's a good name for a child in Israel because he'll never move to America. Can you imagine introducing yourself as Nimrod at a party? Hi, I'm Nimrod. You know, you'd have to wear like a plaid polyester suit or something. You know? With a velvet bow tie. Nimrod. So, but let's get into it a little bit. Let's understand Amalek a little better. This was written by Rav Tzadok HaKohen, a Kabbalist who lived until the year 1900. And it's quite interesting what it talks about with Amalek. Let's read it together. You don't have to read out loud. By the way, the first paragraph we're going to spend a minute on because it's a little harder to understand what freezes. In man's heart, Amalek is the power that freezes man. What does it mean to freeze a man? So it means to causing him to see only absurd chance. So what does it mean to freeze a man? That everything's just coincidence. Everything's just pure chance. See, if everything's just coincidence, that kind of lends to like nihilistic type philosophy where like, you know, everything's just pure chance, no real meaning, and like we're just a bunch of molecules bumping into each other and stuff. Meaning it's kind of anti-divine spark inside a person. It's just, or divine spark in daily activities. It's just everything's cold and cool chance. Okay, so let's do it again. In man's heart, Amalek is the power that freezes man, causing him to see only absurd chance and therefore deny an ethical conscience. Where does that come from? Ethical conscience? Gotta have a God perspective for ethical conscience. Okay? And lastly, deny moral perfection. Where do you get moral perfection? God. So Amalek's not into God. That's the first sign. Next, in the physical body, Amalek fights to destroy the sanctity of Brit Milah, the covenant of circumcision. And then, in space, Amalek covets the land of, everybody? Israel, and is sworn to prevent Israel from attaining its perfection, which is interdependent with dwelling in the land. Now, we've had an entry into Israel, and we get attacked by Amalek. That's 1 for 1. In the history of mankind, Amalek symbolizes the foremost evil amongst the nations, and has always risen up to destroy Israel. Everyone together? When the time of redemption is imminent. You guys didn't say that together. When the time of redemption is imminent, that's when Amalek goes after us, when we're about to go into the land. Once we're in, he's stuck. This is why we probably don't have to worry about another big attack of Amalek, because we're in. Like now, in the state of Israel, we're in. So we're probably pretty good right now when it comes to an Amalek attack. Okay? But his end will be eternal annihilation for evil and those in bodies of evidence of non-existence. Thank you very much. Now, on the 70th year, we're leaving the Babylonian exile, or the Persian exile at that point. We're going to the land of Israel. Who's going to attack us? Amalek. Everyone say Amalek. Amalek. Okay? And lo and behold, we get attacked by this infamous character, the Hitler of that generation, Amalek. And that's Haman. Haman. And that's a picture of his ears. Now, Haman is raised up to power in the 70th year. It makes a genocidal attempt against us the year we're leaving. That's interesting timing, that all of a sudden we have Amalek show up in that kind of capacity. You guys want to grab a seat? There's a spot right there. That looks comfortable to me. And is that available here? Here's a nice spot right here. Sorry to separate you guys. You can bring your chair all the way up if you guys want to hold it.
Yeah, you want to come through?
Okay. You want to sit together? Or you can bring that back.
I'll just sit here.
Okay, here. Make something up. Who is Haman, though? How do we know Haman is Amalek? So you look inside the Torah. Oh, let's just give a little cheer because we won that one. Esther and Mordecai. It was all good news. Okay? Anyway, Haman. How do we know Haman is Amalek? Well, let's look at the scroll itself. It says, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hamdasa, the Agagite. Where do we know the word Agag from? He's from Agag. From the book of Samuel, Shmuel said, bring to me Agag, the king of Amalek. Haman is the direct descendant of the king of Amalek. So they're doing a long battle here because, meaning it's a famous battle because Mordecai is a direct descendant of Shaul the Melech, who did not kill Agag. And so now Agag's great-grandchild is now creating a genocide against the Jews that's going to be saved by Mordechai, who's from which tribe? The tribe of Benjamin, which is Shaul's direct descendant of Shaul, who was from Benjamin. So this is a, what do you call that when a family, what do you call these dynasty fights? Not a family feud, it's I mean, there's a term for it. I think the only people who use those now are Bedouins.
Hatfield and McCoy.
Huh?
Hatfield and McCoys, like that?
I don't know.
Never mind then. Never mind. You gotta know the story.
We built the second temple right out that window of Exhibit A, and it is destroyed by the Romans. I told you guys climbing up this roller coaster ride's a little slow, but we're so close to being there. We build the second temple. It's destroyed by the Romans, and we go into a really long exile. A long exile. So Amalek's going into sleeper cell mode. Only to be activated by what? What year do we declare this state as an independent state, just like First Temple and Second Temple periods? What year did we declare it? 1948. What happens right before that? Was there a genocidal attempt at the Jews? That's right, there was. And we get attacked by the Nazis right before the state of Israel. Now, those of you raised observant might have known this correlation. Maybe, maybe not. Those you raised more secular probably have a different thing, which is that the state of Israel has its own narrative, which you might have heard of, is that we need the state of Israel because look at it, poor us. You know, it was like poor us in the exile, and the state's going to be our safe haven, and the state will make us safe. From a Torah perspective, you want to build a state? Well, you better get ready for Amalek, because if you're going statehood, you're going to be dealing with Amalek, big time. And so it's a pretty heavy thing. Now, there are these Hasidim in New York who are like anti-Israel. You know about that? Yeah, because they didn't believe that the state should have been made with might, but rather Mashiach should have come first. So you know what you tell them? You tell them that if it was really just purely man-made, Amalek wouldn't have showed up. Clearly it was divine. Clearly the state was divinely inspired. I'm just warning you though, they got to come back. And it ain't pretty. They're like, you're right. But it should have come when we would have done better than losing a third of our people had it come in the way it used to come. But because we forced it, so we got hit when we weren't ready. And that's their answer. It's pretty rough. But again, they got a big bone to pick. You can check out your own history of the last million Hungarians. All those Hasidim are Hungarians. And the last million Hungarians to perish in the Holocaust were, it's from their communities. And so there's a lot of pain there, and backing up their feelings and their philosophies and stuff. Sir?
Why, in the other two examples with Amalek and Haman, it's when the Jews were expected to go to Israel. But with the Nazis, it doesn't line up because we didn't know that. We didn't go where.
Yeah, so you just need a little Zionist history. We were big time. The Zionist movement was. You need to check a little history. The Zionist movement was in like full throttle since the 1920s. People were going crazy for it. It was like it became the new kind of flag that everyone was rallying around, especially the secularists, the secular Jews. And after the Enlightenment, most Jews at that point were already secular, and they just had this huge Zionist thing going on, and it was sweeping the shtetls of Europe, Zionism at the time. Okay, so Nazi attack. Now let's get back to the forest, and the forest is that we got 3 altercations between Jacob and Esau. 3 altercations between Amalek and Israel, or the Edomites in Israel. These 2 we had proofs of because open the book of Shemot, of the book of, how do you say it in English? Exodus, and you see we get attacked. Open the book of Megillat Esther, the scroll of Esther, and you see that we get attacked. But what book do you open to see that the Nazis are the 3rd and final altercation with Amalek? What book do you open for that? So now we're finally at the top of the roller coaster. Hold on to your hats for this one. Okay, here we go. I hope everyone went to the bathroom who needed it. Well, I hate to quote Hitler, Yimach Shemo V'Zichro, but I'm going to. Hitler stated, "It is true we are barbarians. It is an honorable title. I free humanity from the shackles of the soul, from the degrading suffering caused by the false vision called conscience immorality." Sounds familiar? The Jews inflicted 2 wounds on mankind: circumcision on its body, conscience on its soul. These are Jewish inventions. The war for world domination will be fought entirely between us, the Germans and the Jews. All else is facade and illusion. Huh? I mean, has he been reading that Kabbalistic work by Reb Sadok Atoin? Is Hitler like a Torah scholar that's reading up? And I'll just remind you of the document. It's right here. I mean, it's almost a direct quote from Hitler about the about the identifying factors of Amalek. By the way, just because someone has these factors doesn't necessarily mean they're Amalek, so don't go like killing people, okay? Because a lot of people today are against the state of Israel, a lot of people are against circumcision, and a lot of people are kind of doing that kind of liberal nihilist atheist thing. So, that doesn't mean they're Amalek, so please, go easy on people. They have to identify themselves a little further than that. And so do we. It's not enough. Is that enough for y'all that Hitler's the final, and now you see the author's control of history, that 3 and 3? Is that enough for you, or you'd like to see a little more? Let's see a little more. So let's open up a little more. And we're going to hit the book of the Talmud. And then we're going to hit the book of Esther. Okay? So let's start with the Talmud. Which Talmud do you think we're going to use? We're going to use, well, it's the Talmud Bavli, but we are going to use the Megillah. This is the Talmud written on for the Purim holiday. And it's Talmud, it's not the Megillah itself. And we start with a question. Rabbi Yitzhak said, or he really asked, what is meant by the verse? This was written 3,000 years ago by King David. Okay, and no one argues when he lived. Oh God, don't grant the desires of the evil man. That's part A. So don't grant the desires of the evil man. Part B, and don't let him draw out his bit. You know what a bit is? Bit's in the horse's mouth. I thought you might not know. So we got that covered. Okay? It's in the horse's mouth. It's up against its gums. And when you want a horse to slow down, you draw it in. When you want the horse to go, you draw it out. Okay? But this is King David writing in the book of Psalms. Don't grant the desires of the evil man. That was part A. Part B is, and don't let him draw out his bit. And part C, lest he raise himself above others. Meaning if you draw it out, he's going to try to raise himself above others. Now the Talmud continues and answers the question. Ryan, I know you have a question, but it was just the time I had to move to here, so keep it, and maybe it's going to come back. Jacob, our forefather, said to God, don't grant the desires of the evil man. This refers to Esav. There's Esav. And don't let him grow out his bit. This refers to who? Gurmamya of Edom. Well, that's peculiar. Has anyone ever heard the term Gurmamya? What's that sound a lot like? Germany. Like Germany, and check it out later. Google it later. You'll see that the name Gurmamya was the name of Germany from almost all of its history. Even today, they don't even call themselves German. They call themselves Deutschland. But the word Gurmamya was the name of Germany throughout most of history. Now, what is the Talmud Bavli, written in Babylon after the second destruction of the second temple? Why are they talking about a concern over Gurmamya of Edom? A little strange that should be in the Talmud. And if you know any German history, it was just a bunch of wild tribes then. It was like not exactly a concern for the Jews to have a bunch of wild tribes going on there. But if you draw out the bit, then you got to watch out. I mean, if there are a bunch of wild tribes, don't draw out the bit. What's the bit? Check it out. The Talmud goes on. And this gets really crazy that the Talmud would do this. But the Talmud goes on. This just our old tradition goes on and says, Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina said there are 300 crown princes in Gurmamya of Edom. Tell me, what's the bit? What's the bit? How do you keep them from raising themselves above the world? Or should we say, what keeps Gurmamya from destroying the entire world? Yeah?
They're all flashy.
Yeah, how do you run a country with 300 crown princes? Meaning disunity. You draw out the bit and they unify, you're going to be in trouble. Well, guess what? Something really amazing. That finally, after thousands of years, a man by the name of Bismarck led Germany to unity at the end of the 1900s. And right after that was World War I, and Germany almost destroys the entire world. When the Allies beat them, they broke them up, separated them. They somehow knew to do that. I don't know how they knew to do that, but they separated them. And they were only reunited under Hitler and immediately World War II. So like the Talmud, written thousands of years ago, like right when Germany was just really not much to talk about, is talking about this concern. But it goes even better. It's not just written 3,000 years ago in Psalms, but it's 4,000 years ago. This is King David, who's just, his hand's like a stenographer. This is Jacob talking through King David's hand while he's writing the Psalms 4,000 years ago. Because Jacob was fighting with Esau, but Jacob was kind of worried about history, so he did some prayer. And this was one of his prayers: God, please don't let Germany unite, because they're Edom. And if they unite, we're in trouble. And you see, that's exactly what happened. They united and they're in trouble. You tell that back to those Sotmir guys from Williamsburg, by the way. Yeah, that you see Jacob was worried about it, so it must have been something real was going to happen over there. So anyway, that was Jacob's prayer. But check out how cool this is. Check out this next slide. This next slide is post-World War II. By the end of the Middle Ages, which had seen Britain and France emerge as unified nations, Germany remained a crazy patchwork of some 300 individual states. The Talmud pulls the number out of the hat like a rabbit and nails it. 300. And that's exactly what happened throughout all of history. They remained totally disunified. But the exact number, as the Talmud mentions, here with an outside verification of a history book. It's fascinating. Okay, great. That was the Talmud. You guys convinced that the Nazis are showing the control of the author? 3 and 3? Well, let's see if we can nail this even further. We're gonna hold the question a little bit. Let's go even further. We're gonna open up the Megillah itself. When you read the Megillah, ladies and gentlemen, you know, it reads like any book of Torah. It doesn't have pictures, no lady jumping out of a cake. Okay? It's got, you know, there's no pictures usually. But it reads like this, reads like this, reads like this. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, you get this totally unique page in the Talmud. Sorry, in the Megillah. And what is that page? That is the page. You getting all these slides, by the way? Yeah, it shows up there? Oh, cool. So what is that page? This page. This totally weird page. And what is this page about? This page is about the hanging of Haman's 10 sons. Now, what's so weird about this page, besides its shape, is they're not in the story. They weren't in the story before this hanging. They're not in the story after this hanging. And then somehow we get this like Microsoft Excel sheet list in the middle of a scroll. Like, why do we have this Excel sheet with their name on one side and the word "and" on the other side? Like, how'd that happen? What's up with that? But it's very convenient for us to spot in the center because we're going to translate. And the Jews struck at all their enemies, and with the sword, and with slaughter and destruction, and did as they pleased to those who hated them. And in Shushan, the capital, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men, including. Now, every man raised observant should please take a deep breath and read these 10 names together, because on Purim, you're going to have to do them all in one breath. So let's all practice, please. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Parshan does it as dolphin was. Hey, where are you guys? 1, 2, 3. Parshan does it as a dolphin was possible. The 10 sons of Haman. You got to get ready. It's coming. Okay? The 10 sons of Haman. Okay? And okay. And it goes on. The Megillah goes on. That same day, the number of those killed in Shushan, the capital, was reported to the king. Now, notice it doesn't say King Achashverosh. It just says king. Notice it's capitalized. Why is it capitalized? Who's it referring to? Not only King Achashverosh, but also who? God. Why? Because it's all coincidence. The whole story just seems to be one coincidence after the other. Absurd chance going on. It's the only book in the entire Torah that doesn't have God's name in it. Because God's hidden. And in fact, the scroll of Esther is Megillat Esther. Megillah means to reveal. Esther means the hidden. What's hidden in everything? God's hidden in everything. In our coincidental little life that we're living. So God's the hidden aspect. And that's why we drink wine, which is a numerical value. Yayin is a numerical value of 70, which is the numerical value of sod. Because when the wine goes in, the secrets come out. And what's the secret? The secret is you're an absolute idiot when you're drunk. Just kidding. The secret is that God is hidden inside of everything. And that all your whole life has been totally orchestrated. Nevertheless, that same day, I can't help but do a little rabbinic parts on the side. Let's get back to Discovery. That same day, the number of those killed in Shushan, the capital, was reported to the king. The king said to Queen Esther, in Shushan, the capital, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men, including the 10 sons of Haman, so they're dead. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? What is your request now? It shall be granted to you. What is your petition further? It shall be fulfilled. Now, ladies and gentlemen, and especially ladies, I want you to imagine you're Esther. You're married to the king. Your people are supposed to go to Israel, which is costly to get them there. But also, you got to rebuild the country. And you got to rebuild the temple. And you're married to like Daddy Warbucks. And he's now offered you whatever you want. What is your request now? It shall be granted. What is your petition further? It shall be fulfilled. He's offering whatever you want. So obviously you ask for Jerusalem. You ask for transportation. But what happens? Queen Esther bumps her head, goes temporarily insane, and says, if it pleases the king, allow the Jews of Shushan to do tomorrow as they have done today, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows. What's up with you, Esther? Esther, hello? Have you gone crazy? Hang 10 dead men? Tomorrow? Like, it was like, what are we, like, downwind from the gallows? She was like, tomorrow. Maybe we'll have a switch in wind direction. And she doesn't even ask for Jerusalem. Jerusalem only gets rebuilt by her son, Darius. She had a child, Darius. He commissioned the temple. She just blew it off. She wants to hang 10 dead men. But when a prophetess says the word tomorrow, what may she be referring to? The future. The New York Times. Going in's life by poison. Well, that's one suicide. Did Haman have another child, by the way, besides the 10? Yeah. What was it, a boy or a girl? Girl. What happened to her? She committed suicide. 10 others hanged in Nuremberg prison for Nazi war crimes. May it be done tomorrow as was done today. And they are hung, these 10 Nazis. But it gets better. Look at the date. This is October 16th, 1946. That is the year 5707, which in Hebrew is the year Taf, which is 400, Shin, 300, Zion, 707. Here's from the news report. Courtroom photo of Nazi war crime trial in Nuremberg, Germany. Though the trial ended in June 1946, sentencing was repeatedly postponed due to appeals for amnesty. Now, please don't all throw up at once. But like, you got 10 Nazis who are hardcore Nazis. These are the real guys. And appeals for amnesty? From June to October? It's 4 months. Like, who in the world is appealing for amnesty for these guys? Even today, they'll find a Nazi in his 90s. There's no amnesty. There is no amnesty. They go to jail and die there. So how could it possibly be there were appeals for an amnesty? But I have a question for you all. What year was the hanging? Taf Shin Zion. What is the year of June 1946? Taf Shin Vav. 6 is Vav. It's not Taf Shin Zion. It's Taf Shin Vav. And they were not hung in June Tafshin Vav. And they're not in July, Tafshin Vav, or August, Tafshin, not September. But what happened at the end of September that year? Tafshin Vav becomes Tafshin Zion, and then they get hung, boom, on October 16th, which by no coincidence turns out to be Hoshana Rabbah, the 7th day of the Sukkot holiday. Well, that's a little morbid for a celebration called Sukkot, a pilgrimage festival, unless, of course, you open up the Zohar and learn what Hoshana Rabbah is all about. On the 7th day of the Sukkot holidays, i.e. Hoshana Rabbah, the judgment of the nations of the world is finalized. Sentences are issued from the residence of the king. Judgments are aroused and executed on that day. Oh, Judgment Day of the Nations. It's Judgment Day of the Nations. And the hanging winds up, right? Not winds up. Is controlled up, right to that day. And notice how God's referred to. I mean, have you guys ever, I don't know how much Zohar you all learned. I got to learn some this morning. It usually doesn't call God the residence of the king. But when you're doing an allusion from 2,500 years ago, the king in Persia, you call God the residence of the king. Because that was the residence of the king that she asked the king. And the residence of the king chose to do it on Judgment Day of the nations. You guys convinced yet that perhaps the Nazis are Amalek in our third battle? Think about it. How many times we've come into the land in mass? We came from Egypt to the land, Amalek attacks. We came from Persia into the land, Haman attacks, full genocide attack. We come from the exiles back to Israel to declare the state in 1948. We get a massive genocidal attack. Coincidence? Amalek, three battles, control of history. Who authored this thing? Who authored this book? Human beings? Humans author this thing? Well, it gets better. Taf Shin Zion. Let's just see how you do math for those who are new to this. Taf Shin Zion. 707. Please look at that list of names. For 2,500 years, every scribe wrote out the names of Haman, but they also had to make sure to write some letters, like any book in Torah. Some letters are big, some letters are little. Do you notice any strange letters, for example, in the first name up there? What do you see? A little taf. In every single scroll for 2,500 years, there's a little taf there by the name of Haman's 10 sons. Go down the list. In order. Go down the list. May it be done tomorrow as was done today, and may Haman's 10 sons be hung on the gallows. And the list of those names, of names that weren't even in the story, not even part of the narrative. An Excel sheet with the actual date of the Nuremberg trials. Now 707 is only the hundreds. How many times did 707 happen? So the answer is 6 times. Right? 707 is Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey, and Vav. Look back at the list of the names. Anyone notice a big Vav anywhere? Look at that big old Vav. And there's an amazing Zohar on that Vav. You have to ask me privately, but there's an amazing Zohar on that Vav about redemption. I'll tell you the Zohar, but I'm not explaining. But it says that when the Vav representing the 6th millennia, right? When the Vav representing the 6th millennia begins, the Hay will rise up. I don't know if you know, you got to know a lot of Torah, but the little Hay in the 4th line of the 2nd chapter of Bereshis, Behi Baram, yeah? The Hay will rise up from the dust of the exiles. the hay will rise up from the dust of the exiles, and then we announce statehood right after that. Amazing little Zohar there. Okay, I explained it. But I'm incorrigible. Okay. That's 10. We spoke about the suicide. 11. But as many of you know, the Talmud talks about an 11th child of Haman because it has a weird thing. There's no one killed when you read the book, but yet it says he was mourning. Right there. Over his daughter who had dumped a bucket of a bedpan on his head. So the Megillah says his head was covered, which obviously begs the question, what does it mean his head was covered? And the answer is with filth. She thought it was Mordechai. When he looked up and she saw she dumped a bedpan on her father from the upper balcony, she jumped to her death. Right there. Interestingly, this is Goring who killed himself. This is dead Goring right outside in the bathroom. He killed himself in the bathroom, which is interesting with the bedpan thing. And this is going to be a little weird. I apologize for this next slide. This is Goring out on the town. Don't ask. Convinced? Does the author of this document have control over history? And remember our question here. Our question is, could a human being have written the document? What do you think? Human being could have pulled this off? And you got to be amazingly good to do this. In fact, you can't do this. Nobody can do this, no matter how good you are. You cannot do this. But it gets better. It does get better. This last slide is just super freaky, but it's actually a Newsweek article that's going through the actual hangings, because the first 9 guys just, they were hung. It's interesting, the hangman, those who know the Megillah, keep saying everyone's hung all at 8s. How do you say 8s in English? Wood. 8s is also wood and tree, but it's usually not used for tree. It's used for wood. So check out the hangman's name. What's the hangman's name? Woods. Hangman's name is Woods. But that's not why I'm showing you this slide. What happened was 9 of the 10 are hung. They just get up there and they get hung. The 10th man goes crazy. And watch what happens. There's a Newsweek article from June 1946. Only Julius Streicher went without dignity. He had to be pushed across the floor, wild-eyed and screaming, "Hail Hitler!" Mounting the steps, he cried out, "And now I go to God." He stared at the witnesses facing the gallows and shouted, "Purim Fest, 1946. The last Nazi to be hung makes a Purim reference on Hoshana Rabbah. We came here today to have a special opportunity to take kind of religion out of the Torah and just let it be about a document, to try to see if a human being could have written this document. Because documents are usually written by human beings, and it's a little far-fetched to consider God an author. But apparently, human beings couldn't have written the Torah. Apparently, from this class you had today, from these sessions. If you look at world history, if you come all the way here, if you say this is like all the way back at the beginning, or we could even call this Sinai. So you have this being Sinai, and then you have, you could have the Amalek attack, First Temple, Persian exile, 70 years, Second Temple, and then this like super long exile. Now that window overlooking the Temple Mount, that's going to be redemption, because we got to have a temple period. Because this prophets say there's going to be a third temple period before 6,000. Let's say that window represents 6,000. So at one point, let's just say here's the attack by the Nazis, here's the state of Israel, 6-day war, we get back our biblical territory. Tell me, when should I stop? Because right now it's 57, this year is 5779 out of 6,000, meaning we're only 221 years away. So someone say stop.
Stop.
Yeah, he said we're here. Now God is batting 1,000 in everything that Torah said. Nothing's missing. Everything the Torah said was going to happen, everything's been done except for the rebuilding of that temple. Look where we're having this class. And all the historical events that happened to get us to this point. Can you imagine at this point in history, God would just say, you know what? Forget it. Can you imagine God just said, yeah, it was a nice idea. But nah. I think all of us realize at this point that we're on the other edge of history. And God, who's been batting 1,000, is not going to strike out this time. That we're there. We made it. But here's the scary thing. How many of us have friends, family members, neighbors, and all kinds of people who are Jewish, part of this tribal destiny, who are just dropping like flies from our traditions? It's wild. And I think Esther, when she sacrificed building the temple right then, I think she had you in mind. Because she would rather have, in year 2019, she'd rather have you be able to come to this room and get verified. Verification, just like you got to get verified to open a Facebook account or WhatsApp, they send you the verification. That you could get verified. She would rather have you get verified than build the temple. Because she is a prophetess. She knew the second temple wasn't going to be a go. And so what she did want was that when we hit the end of days, there would be someone called Jewish by the time God handled that part of history. She knew also probably that the Jews were just going to fall apart right at the end. And so you have been made privy to some of the most amazing information. Because you now know for the rest of your life that Judaism is not a religion. Religion is just an oversized cult. Judaism is actually verifiable. And it would have to be verifiable with 55,000 laws. There's no way anyone's doing that. It has to be you're part of this long chain. And that not only that you're a long chain of tradition, but you're also able to verify it as an individual. Because you got Elokeinu, our God, that's the verification. And Elokei Avoseinu, and the God of our forefathers. That's your long tradition. Meaning the reason you know you're Jewish sitting in here right now is because of the God of your forefathers. But to keep all that stuff just because my grandfather did, not enough. Not enough. I need my own verification, especially with today's pressures. So in order for us to be able to live in modern society today with all of its pressures, and to have to be that salmon swimming upstream against modernity, you got this great gift called discovery today, to be a verifier. So that when all your friends are going one way, while you're on your way to a Shabbos table, that you're already stamped and verified. You already got the verification codes. That it's the real deal. And it's worth holding fast. And it's worth marrying someone who's willing to keep this thing going because of how awesome it is and how true it is. So I'm going to end with a blessing to everyone here that you take this moment and lock it in big time. Because like any other moment, this could fade too. And the world at large can help you forget quickly some of the most important things. And so everyone lock it in right now. Everyone just take a moment. Let's all be quiet for a second. Just in your own personal life. Your own personal life. I don't know where you were going with things till you got in this room. Just take a moment and lock it in. You can close your eyes a moment. Take a deep breath. Just lock it in that this is going to make an impact now, or it makes the impact now. It may shift your trajectory a little, but you'll be fine. You're on God's team, you'll be doing perfectly. Open your eyes. May you be blessed to be witness to the great show at the end of days coming soon to a theater near you. Thank you. Do you have evaluation form? Just one more thing. Guys, this class continues every day downstairs in Essentials, where we have our whole staff, everyone you heard from today, plus more, every single day, co-ed.